Welcome to Discover Joyous Love with Anita DeFrancesco as your host. This is a hybrid of topics under the subjects of mindfulness, sexuality, and relationships. Hello, you're listening to Discover Joyous Love, and this is episode 43. I'm your host, Anita DeFrancesco, and today I have the extraordinary lovers with us, Laurie Handlers and Michael Gibson, hailing with us from Arizona here on the show today. They are traveled people. They are traveling around the world. Laurie and Michael are involved with ISTA. You can tell me more about ISTA.
Okay.
And they're doing a lot of workshops around the country, around the world, actually. And I noticed that you're very busy traveling all over the place. So good afternoon, Laurie and Michael. How are you today?
Thank you.
Hello. Welcome. Say something. Hello. How are you?
We're good.
We're well. Thank you, Anita.
Yeah. Well, let us introduce ourselves. So we'll tell a little about each other. Do you want to tell about me first?
Of course. So I love to introduce Laurie to the crowd. Usually it goes something like this. This is a woman who is an extraordinary lover. She's my partner. I absolutely adore her. She is a goddess from within. She has written a #1 international bestseller on Amazon called Sex and Happiness, the Tantric Laws of Intimacy. She's award-winning filmmaker, and she is also the general of the sexual revolution. Ms.
Yes,
Laurie
I know she is. Absolutely. And I'm so delighted to have you both here on the show. I have a famous woman. I have famous people here with me today.
Thank you. And this is Michael Gibson, my partner, my beloved. He went from being a nerd, like a computer nerd, a network engineer, to being a sex geek. And it all happened as a result of a divorce. He was married for years, 16 years, and had at some point a pretty sexless marriage. And then it broke up. And I said to him, "How did you learn how to make love?" And he said to me, "I Googled it." And so there you have the answer. Like he became a geek, and a different geek. So I love you, and I'm happy to be on this show with you.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Well,
okay.
This is wonderful. Now, Laurie, I know that we met, how long ago did we meet? How many years ago? We met at a conference in New York?
Yes. I don't know. It has to be in the early 2000s. And we were on a sex and sensuality panel at the New Life Expo in New York City. Alan Steinfeld was moderating the panel.
Okay.
And you and I discovered that we were very symbiotic. We discovered that our practices of emotional release and self-pleasure and teaching people about the importance of their bodies, but also the importance of their emotions, you and I discovered that we were like so similar. And then you came on my podcast and you gave a show about kissing.
Well, kissing, I was at Burning Man one year and I did some workshops there, but I had attended other workshops at Burning Man, and the workshop facilitator didn't show up that day. So they asked me if I wanted to do a workshop like impromptu. So I just said, I'll do something on kissing, because I was in a relationship and I was having some issues or whatever around kissing. So I just impromptu, I did a whole kissing workshop, and that's how I got involved with that. It's really important to do something on kissing because it's such the way to intimacy.
Yes.
Before sex. And so I'd like to do another workshop. I will at some point on that. But that's all part of my Tantra workshops anyway. We're always doing something kissing.
Yeah.
So then when you and I met, and then we did your podcast, are you still doing your podcast or?
Yeah, we've changed the format. It's still called Sex and Happiness. It might have, when you came on, it might have been Tantra Cafe, but it's called Sex and Happiness. And I don't interview people too much anymore. Michael and I just get on and we jam about extraordinary love. Sometimes we take somebody else's video and we comment on it. We agree with it or we don't agree with it or whatever. We more of that because I burned out. I've been 15 years interviewing people.
Yes, right. You've done a lot. You've done
Yeah.
So tell me, what are you both doing now? I know you're with ISTA and you're traveling around the world. You're teaching a lot of extraordinary lovers workshops. You're talking about self-love. I'm seeing some of your posts about the powerless leads to chronic blaming, a lot of different things. So what's really hot right now in the world of relationships and love, and what people are really in need of since post-pandemic, and how the lockdown has affected us, and you're really on the move. So
so we do extraordinary lovers luxury retreats. We're doing one coming up in Tulum, Mexico in November. And here's the bottom line. We believe that couples are an endangered species.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Let's talk about that. What do you mean by that?
Well, we meet people who've been together either a short time or a long time, and they get into one of three places. They either can't stop arguing and being right about something, whatever they're being right about. We find that they neutralize each other, like they neutralize their polarities and they become best friends, but there's no juice or spark anymore. Or we find that there's resentment. One of them or both of them are not speaking their truth. They're not having the hard conversations. I mean, nobody ever taught us to have the hard conversations. So then we get in a relationship, we think it's going to be great. And then there are things we don't say to each other.
Yeah.
So Michael and I it seems simple. It seems
just tell them what's going on.
Between you two, it seems simple.
Yeah, but these things are not simple because we didn't learn about them. No one ever taught us anything about them. The medical profession doesn't talk about it. The psychology profession doesn't talk about it. People just, we didn't learn it in school. We learned algebra. We didn't learn this.
Right. We have a couple of programs. One is the retreat, which we take 7 days, and we do 13 workshops in 7 days. And we go through all of the different thresholds of love. So we believe there's 3 thresholds, really. There's self-love, and then there's love of your other or your partner or partners, and then there's love that manifests. When we say thresholds, we don't mean threshold like you step over into another room. What we mean is there's a threshold of what is ordinary in life. So we identify what's ordinary, and then that threshold, when you get to that point that you go beyond the ordinary, now we start talking about what's extraordinary. And so how do you love yourself in an extraordinary way? New ways, creative ways, powerful ways, nourishing ways to love yourself. And then take that and allow that to overflow into the love that you have for your partner or your children or your business or whatever. And then from there, you can take that love and then cross the threshold of what's ordinary that manifests. And Laurie is the queen of manifestations.
So this, and you're teaching people, what is your approach in teaching them to in the steps, the different steps of how to do this? Because there's always the lab. What is the lab for them?
It's experiential.
Beside communication, what is the lab? What is the work? Because people think it's just an actual talking and then they or reading a book, but there's a lab here, isn't there? That we have to go into.
When I first developed the program, it was called Extraordinary Lovers Experience, and it was a 3-day, really quick deep dive into what it is to experience yourself in an extraordinary way when it comes to love. And so that's the lab is an experiential process. And the process takes you from, wow, okay, this is what feels ordinary in the body. And then being able to detect when it goes from that to something very different, to something very extraordinary. And so that's the biggest part of what it is that we do in that laboratory experience, is giving them new neural pathways What does it feel like to actually be loved? What does it feel like to be present? What does it feel like to actually have that presence surround and inhabit the space between and meet each other in a very powerful way? So it's very much experiential. Whether you go to the 3-day experience or the retreat experience, if you're experiencing Laurie and myself, you're experiencing something very different.
So you're teaching them, how to what is love? You're teaching them exactly bringing the consciousness to love, an emotion that is something that really has gone by the wayside because people take it for granted and they think that just sex is love, or they don't really know. So you're opening up that neural pathway, as you said, for them to dissect and move around in and find a direction or a journey or something new about themselves that they haven't discovered, or even open up their own patterns and pain, right?
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely. Can you move this?
Mm-hmm.
I wanted to say that we're using communication. We're using embodiment practices that have to do, we do some emotional release, but we also do practices about being present. Like being like so present. Nobody's ever been present like this before, because Michael did a study a few years ago. He interviewed 300 people, and women said in the study that the biggest factor for them to know when they've really had like a 10 out of a 10 experience of being made love to was presence, not skill. Not techniques, not sexual techniques, but presence of a partner. So we go into huge lengths to teach people how to be present to each other.
Right. This is so important.
That's
like
like
the whole sensual of it. That's the whole sensual, the presence. And with, just being present is enough really sometimes for them to say that, hey, I am love.
Yes, I'm ringing my bell. Yes.
I am love. And that's why my podcast is Discover Joyous Love.
Yes.
Because it is a discovery, I believe. And I've been there in that place where the presence is all that matters. Nothing else matters. The physicality of the person doesn't matter. The skill set of the person doesn't matter. It doesn't matter anything except the presence. And it's this reverence. This is after you do the work.
Yes.
The work, which I have done, and with other people I'm training to do. So I see that in them. But this is amazing. How can we get the world to understand this? You're going around the world. You're traveling to Iceland and everywhere. I see you guys going. Are you tapping in and getting the world to understand how to be there?
Well, we are, and it's a slow movement. It's a movement, but it's a slow movement. And one of the struggles that we find is, frankly, there's two of us. And so, how do we, the two of us, begin to move into the world and get people to understand that these are really simple concepts. They're simple practices because we offer practices. It's not just something that a lot of people, when you go to their programs, they give you tools, right? Tools are great. Tools are necessary when you need to build something. Practices are how you live your life. And so in the world of shamanism, I believe that a shaman is someone who's practicing ongoingly in their life. They never arrive. They never go guru. They're always practicing their lives. They're practicing their craft. They're always honing it, making it better. So that's something that we give people in our programs, that they can then take those practices and make them better. And if they do, tell us, because we want to know. We want to know what you did to make that practice even better. So those are some of the things that we're focusing on.
But
and it's difficult to do that to the whole world all at once.
Yes, I want to say, so there are some distinctions here. A lot of times we tell people what we're doing, and then one partner has to drag the other partner.
Yes.
Or partners, because sometimes people have more than one partner. They have to drag the other partners to the thing, because we found that there's a difference between women and men. Women seem to be very open to learning new things, new ideas, and wanting to grow exponentially. Men are taught to know, they're supposed to know stuff, especially about sex. And so a lot of times when we tell men, this is what we're doing, they go, I got this. But we find out through our studies, through the study that Michael did, men are kidding themselves. They don't got this. A lot of the times women don't tell the truth. They're afraid to tell. This is where the difficulty in the communication comes in. Women often settle for terrible, lousy sex, and because they don't want to hurt the person's feelings, so they say to the guy, you got this, but the guy doesn't have this. And so there's a difference in skill sets. There's a difference. Women talk about it. Men don't talk about it. Women like chooch with each other. They go out for a glass of wine and they say, so he touched me like this, and I feel, oh my God, so many orgasms. Men don't say that to each other. They don't talk about it. So
what do they say, Michael?
Oh my gosh. You're going to make me tell on the men right now?
Tell her.
I'm going to get hate mail.
Tell her.
All right. Well, I'll tell you what happens. So imagine
in the locker room,
group of men in the locker room, right? And one of the guys is, he's known to have been spending some time with some beautiful young girl or woman. And we ask, all right, what did you do? Hey, what happened?
How was it?
And here's what he says. He's like, yeah, I fucked her. Yeah. And they go, and we go, really? How was it? And then he goes, it was good, man. It was really good. Yeah, she's great.
They don't talk about, that's it.
There's no detail.
No.
Well, there's detail. Well, I sometimes think that men give detail when they want to feel like they're the sport, like, well, she did this to me, or we did it that way, and oh, wow, she was hot. They get detail in a sexual way that could kind of be like a fantasy, a kink, or whatever, but not in the sense of emotion, like the woman would, or love, or sensual, or that presence.
It's actually, to go into detail in a group of men actually feels a little weird.
Yeah, they tell that to, they might tell that to you, Anita.
Right. And then I forgot. I talked to guys about this. Right. Oh no.
No, the rest of the guys are like, whoa, that's enough, man.
No,
okay.
They don't tell each other. They tell me, they tell you, but they don't tell each other.
Right.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah. So they don't learn.
So women are more detailed, but then the woman, she doesn't have maybe the voice or the know-how to get him to sort of join forces with her in that sense. And it's something that they need the workshop, the Extraordinary Lovers workshop that you're presenting, because this is, and they have to drag the man, like you said. I find that in my Tantra workshops where they have to drag I had a couple leave not long ago, and he didn't want to be there. She dragged him. And in the middle, she goes, we're leaving because he wants to leave. And they were fighting and they walked out. And I just thought to myself, I'll have to send them to you, right? Because, I just thought, well, he didn't like what we were doing. She says, oh, he did. I think he got he didn't want to open his emotion to her. He liked being in that stayed place, where, and a lot of men are that way. Am I right? They're that way.
So, and it's strange. It has to do with age of man. So when it comes to a man who's, late 40s, 50s, 60s, these are men who are probably a little bit more stoic. We were raised in a different time. Today, our emotions are not something that we typically focus on, although we know that we need to be emotionally intelligent. There was no real training for that growing up.
You were supposed to be, you were never supposed to cry or show.
My father is now in his mid 70s, and he never showed emotion, and I really didn't know him growing up. So there was no role model for that. And now today you have, 30s and younger, they're very emotional and they're very interested in connecting and having experiences where their emotions are being dealt with, and younger men are now leaning towards the feminine in a lot of ways, and they're missing the power and beauty of their masculine. And so oftentimes when they find themselves in the masculine, they get a little they hold back, or they aren't able to really access that. So there's some shifts that are happening based on age and when and where you were raised. And that's something that we have to address with all men. So it's a difficult thing to look at, especially, and now younger men are actually starting to come to these programs much more readily.
Right. Well, modernizing with the times, for one thing, and also the edge of patriarchy that my generation come from. That patriarchy was such a thing that even women played that role, that everything was the edge of patriarchy. And I think that's where a lot of men got kind of stuck. Well, not stuck, they just didn't grow. And they didn't, so no growth. And now you have the young men, and and Tantra is all about the feminine and masculine polarities coming together. And it's beautiful when the man can be vulnerable and he can show his heart and still be that man, because that is what the woman wants. She wants to see the heart. She wants to see the emotion. They bottle it up, I think, sometimes. And I think I'm in the generation where patriarchy was the thing. And my father was no expression whatsoever. My mother was totally expressed. So I've kind of got a little bit of both of them, a little warm. Dad was cold, mom was hysterical. But
what's funny about that, Anita, is that we've worked with couples where the man was very stoic, very, he was very in control of his anger and frustrations, and she would just blow up on him just to get him to emote. She would like frantically losing her mind on him so that he would at least emote something. She's like, just show me something. Show me you have emotions. And it takes a while to break a man out of that. His emotions are dangerous. The idea that emotions make you weak, right? That's something that was taught to me. And I was told never to cry. Men don't cry. I was the John Wayne era kind of masculine. And, that's something that is now starting to find its way on a downward crest. It's starting to move downward, and we're starting to see more of the emotion being embraced, and also to be intelligent about our emotions. So men are struggling right now. We have some different pressures.
Lost. I think they're lost.
A lot of different calculus happening right now with men. So this is something that's so important to us if we're going to continue as a species.
Yeah.
Right. And we need this shift to happen. Yeah. And the woman has to be the teacher. Or put him in a, lock him down and punish him, because the woman needs to teach, even if they're the same generation.
Yes.
And see, I find couples, they put each other in prison, so to speak, and they punish each other. But there has to be, and this is where the workshops come in, where they can learn to open and communicate and understand that it's safe. It's safe for them to want to go to another place. And because emotions, like I said, if emotions haven't been tapped in for years, it could be a very unsafe place for a man, to open those that come to that place.
Well, we just came back from Europe, and we did a bunch of workshops in Europe, and we one of the things we do is we give people very simple rituals. And then, so we'd say to them, listen, if you want to make sex sacred, that's where Tantra comes in. And we're going to give you some really simple rituals to do together as a couple when you want to communicate something very important, very intense, very hard, when you want to make love, when you want to finish making love. So we give people a lot of small and easy to do rituals that increase their communication, that increase their ability to, they know, oh, this is the time. It's like, it's almost like behavior modification. Like we're saying, okay, here, we're going to give you this ritual for this. We're going to give you this ritual for this. And then the men take to it. After we taught a group of people in Italy, we caught up with one of the husbands later on in our European trip. And he said, we had so much to talk about when we were driving home. He said, we thought we were going to spend the night somewhere and then drive the next day some more. He said, but we ended up driving 12 hours all the way back to where we live in Europe because we had so much to talk about after we met you. And he said, we're going to make some changes. We can't wait. We're so excited. He said, we were driving and crying. We were driving and feeling each other. We were talking about things we hadn't talked about in years. So we know that it works.
Yeah.
And we know that it's simple. We just have to get in front of the people.
Yeah.
You know?
Interesting. You're tapping that well that exists in people, that part of them that is, that's dormant, and they're awakening. So it's more awakening. And I think that what you're saying, the small little rituals are good beginner like steps for them so that they can, find the space to kind of grow and then take the next step.
Exactly.
And so so the fear doesn't, overpower them, or even the love, because the love could be overpowering to someone and to the couple that say they've been together a while. And if the love becomes overpowering, they may become even more fearful because they're not ready for that.
Yeah.
And it's amazing what you're doing. I'm totally in awe of all of this work you're sharing with lots of couples and single people too, right? Single people are joining the force as far as that if they want to find a beloved, men or women, or coming alone, say men that haven't been in a relationship for a while and they really don't know the steps to even make that happen or begin. I mean, this can help them as well.
Yes. We work with singles who we found like either they haven't been in a relationship for a really long time, or they've been dating and they've been in a relationship over and over again, making the same exact mistakes. For example, we find that people hold back when they first meet each other because they want to be liked. They want the person to like them, so they don't want to say anything too risky. And we find that people should start to say some of their values and their boundaries right away. And so, because if the person doesn't like them right out of the box, then good. They shouldn't waste too much time with that. We encourage singles to figure out what their values are and then talk about them with whoever they meet, and talk about what are their definite deal breakers, like the boundaries that they have. We find that the boundaries give people a chance to trust each other. Oh, you have a boundary about that? Okay, I won't try to manipulate you off that. I can respect that. Okay, great. Then intimacy grows in places where you didn't expect it. I can use us as an example.
Yeah.
When we met, we weren't attracted to each other. And then we met again, and then we were attracted to each other. And we did it like a 10-minute vetting conversation about like, what do you value? And then what are some of your boundaries? Michael was so good. He put boundaries up before I did. He said he had boundaries, and I was like, okay. And I respected that. It was like, it was so refreshing to get honesty. Like, he didn't care if he wasn't going to get laid. What he cared about was knowing, maybe he did care about if he was going to get laid. But he said, if you ever spend the night at my house, or if I ever spend the night, if we ever have sex at my house or at your house, don't think you're spending the night. Don't think I'm spending the night. I need my sleep. I really value my sleep more than anything. And I was just like, that's weird, but I can live with that. So I said, okay. And then, 3 or 4 months into it, he said to me, can I spend the night?
Wow, that was soon. That was pretty soon.
But he trusted me. I wasn't trying to change what he said he wanted. So it was like he risked saying it. Mm-hmm. And so we teach people to risk saying, I value this. This is my boundary around it. Mm-hmm. Instead of trying to just be a people pleaser. Yeah. For whatever the goal is. I find that men are people pleasers because they want to have sex, and women are people pleasers because they want to be loved.
Yeah.
And we're trying to end people from doing that, and actually get them to be authentic when they start to relate, and see if the person can respect the boundary without trying to manipulate it or change it or
Well,
or
and
something.
here's a little pro tip as well, and that is that when it comes to boundaries, you need boundaries until you don't. So what that means is that if you have someone who honors your boundaries and they honor your boundaries consistently, then at some point you don't need that boundary anymore. And with Laurie, it was more than 3 months. It was probably closer to like 9 months.
Oh,
But
Oh, how long have you been together?
7 years.
Oh, 7 years. Okay.
Yeah. So at around that point in time, Laurie and I had consistently, lived this way where my boundaries were being honored. And at one night I said, I was tired. I didn't really want to go home. And I said, would it be okay? That was the moment I was able to drop the boundary because I trusted her. Now, imagine for 9 months if she had been prodding me and saying, oh, please just stay over. Can I just please stay over? I would have been no, and that boundary would have stayed up until this very day. But like I said, you only need boundaries until you don't.
See, you're extraordinary, Michael.
yes.
Definitely, we need more men like you out there. Especially that you shifted into Laurie's world and not even knowing anything about the whole sexual practice as she's been in this many years. How many years have you've been doing this a very long time? All of this
25 or more, 25 plus.
Starting in New York and then moving out from there.
No, starting in DC.
Oh,
I was
DC.
in Washington, DC. Yeah. And then I moved to New York and back to New York. And then I moved to Arizona. So yeah, it's been a ride, a wild ride. Yeah.
It's been a wild ride.
And one of the things he was into, though, he was into studying Tantra when I met him. But what he thought Tantra was sort of what they call tantric massage. He had a teacher that was teaching him about touch and about white tigress and white tiger Tantra. But he had never come to like a group class before. And he came to my class and he said, whoa, this is a lot of stuff. There's a lot of things here. It's much more, that's where he learned about breath, sound, and movement and like the expansion of Tantra, being bigger than a one-on-one experience.
I think it's really important that people exchange boundaries in the beginning, but a lot of time when two people come together, say they're very infatuated with each other, or there's this twin flame kind of love, or at least this kind of soulmate love. And they sort of lose that voice. They acquiesce to the feelings. Well, the fantasy feelings. They might not be the true feelings, because remember, we have to get them there to understand. But they have maybe a temporary presence that happens, or a temporary kind of, bliss that's going on. But how do we, how do they know? I mean, if they don't take a workshop, that they should, at least exchange their boundaries and get into the communication end of things. It's so important, because what happens is 6-7 months, they're having this infatuation, and then all of a sudden they wake up and realize they missed a step. They missed the communication, or they missed, or like, wow, are you really for me now? Or they could have had something better. It doesn't have to be something that lasts forever, a relationship. We're not teaching people that every relationship is going to be the one and only. We're teaching them how to, have the healthiness of a relationship and more long going, giving and receiving sex, and so that it can just be growthful for them.
Yeah, I think in terms of relationships, when we talk about relationships, we talk about something that we're building together, like a thing. Right. And so inside of a relationship, if you think of a relationship as a building, you would set the foundation first, and then you would start building on top of that, let's say bricks. And it's not too hard, if you leave a brick out, to put a brick in and fill that spot.
Oh my God, sorry.
I'll say that again.
It's not too that you
Laurie just had a heart attack.
Oh
Her phone went off.
So sorry.
Let me check my phone, make sure it's off. Do not disturbs. I thought you were gonna like.
I just was so shocked. Okay.
So to fill in that brick, you can sort of fill in. You were saying the brick.
Yeah, in a relationship, if you've built up so far and there's a brick missing, you can simply slip that brick in and no problem. But if the foundation is missing, you've got a real problem, because it's
Mm.
difficult to take all the brick or whatever you're using to build that building of a relationship together unless you've got a solid foundation. And the solid foundation 100% is yours. You have to have worked on yourself, or you can't build anything. So it's important for us to start there. Otherwise, you're simply building on sand, and it doesn't take much to take a building out if it's built on sand.
So,
Well,
so many good relationships out there went by the wayside because people didn't have, we won't say the tools, but they didn't have the foundation.
Yeah.
They didn't have, what I want, if you want to say something else, but I wanted to get into about feeling powerless leads to the chronic blaming, your post I saw.
yeah.
I like to get into that because there's this chronic kind of narcissism that goes on in relationships where there's the belittling and the judging, and it's supply and food for others in a sense if there's a narcissism or a quasi narcissism going on. But this blaming because one person doesn't have the self-worth or self-esteem or doesn't feel good about themselves in whatever it is. Maybe he or she is making more money, or they're more greater in the world, or like I noticed that in one of my relationships anyway. Maybe you could talk about that a little bit there.
Well, for me, what I meant by that really is it's a question of self-love. And when someone feels powerless, they need to do something about that. Like no one's coming to rescue them. There is no rescuer. Although there are people who feel like, oh, I see a damsel in distress, or I see a man who could be a project, so I'm going to rescue them. I'm going to be, that's the Cartman drama triangle. I'm going to be their savior and rescue them. But for the most part, no one is coming to rescue anybody. The police aren't coming to rescue us. The government's not rescuing us. No one's rescuing us from our lives. And it's really necessary to take on self-love. It's really necessary to find ways to let go of whatever messages were given to us in our youth, or whatever, this new thing, the imposter syndrome. Like, we have a friend who's an expert in that. She says it's all made up. Just like, stop it. So I always go back to that. I always go back to the old Bob Newhart show. There's an old Bob Newhart used to play a psychologist on TV, and there's a very popular episode that people can go on YouTube and find, where a woman comes to him and she says, "Doctor, I'm obsessing about this, and I can't, I keep having these thoughts, and what should I do? I just can't stop it." And Bob Newhart turns around and he goes, "Just stop it." And
oh, right, that's good.
Yeah. So,
well, sometimes people need that command. We're governed by this voice, like the parents, when they go, "Don't do it," or "Do as I say." And sometimes children, are governed by that, and they maybe that's what he was getting at, and maybe.
Yeah.
I think a big part of that is when we're faced with a challenge or a pressure, okay, we have an almost always automatic way of being around that pressure, around that stress or stressor. And then it becomes, well, I'm going to do this, or I'm going to do that, or there's an automatic way in which we do that. And what Stop It does is it says there's another option to this. You can just stop it. And it's so brilliant, so simple, so powerful. When people lose their power, and I think this was part of your question, which is, when we get into the blame game and there's a narcissist involved and you're feeling powerless, what are some of the ways that you deal with that? Well, one of the ways that Laurie teaches is to actually become the witness and to discover where you're feeling whatever that is that's hitting.
To notice it.
It's hitting your body. So you'll notice it either in your sex or your power, maybe your root, maybe your heart, wherever that's showing up, and then begin to address it from there, starting with you. And this has to do with moving emotions, doing emotional release, that kind of thing. But at some point, you've got to address the issue. And that's where powerful, like straight, fearless communication comes in. And Laurie has a chapter in her book called Full Contact Confrontation. It's an absolutely brilliant chapter, and it talks about being able to say and speak your truth without fear. That can only happen if you're willing to return to love.
That's a beautiful statement there. Returning to love, and the love is the relationship to the self to begin with.
Yes,
your own feelings, but we need to teach people how to do that. Don't know how to do that. They feel that just loving themselves by buying themselves a nice gift once in a while, and that's part of it, pampering the self. But I think that deep relationship to the self where they can really speak to that person inside and coming back to love. What did you say? Bringing it back to love? What was your
return
to love. And that's the baby, the innocence, right? Going back to that deep place inside, and we manifest it as the truth, the higher power, but it's really going back into that place, returning to before you were born, huh? Maybe.
Yeah.
The innocent love.
Well, part of it also has to do with like self-love, like figuring out what it is we want and need, and then giving it to ourselves, not expecting it to come from someone else.
Right.
So it's not just a gift. It could be touch. It could be spending alone time. It could be taking care of our body. It could be diet. It could be whatever. Taking the time to find out what makes us feel good and then giving it to ourselves, whether there's someone else or not. And that's part of it also, because a lot of the blame that goes on with partners is, you didn't do this for me, and I did this for you. We had lunch once with a couple who was keeping score on how often one did one thing for one and one did something for the other. And we were kicking each other under the table and going, we got away and we said, they thought we were interested in that.
They thought it was funny.
We didn't like it. It was like, why are you keeping score? It was like they each had a score sheet. So when I'm talking about that powerless thing, it's more like, what do I need and how can I give it to myself rather than expecting someone else to give it to me? It's not an entitlement. And then how can I love myself enough to ask for what I need in a situation and take the risk that I'm going to get it or not get it, but not be expectant. Like find a way to ask for what I need for my desires.
Right. So asking.
It's asking, and it's risking. Everything is risking. Like everything is risking. This is who I am, and this is what I want and need, and how about you?
Yeah.
This is who you are, and what do you want and need? And it's a conversation not just found in the chemistry, which is what you were talking about earlier. The 6 months or the 8 months of like passionate chemistry. Chemistry is good. You need it. You definitely need it, but it's something that can be kindled. Like it can be the flames can be fanned, but if you don't have the other stuff, the ability to communicate, the ability to speak about it, the ability to even know who you are and witness who you are, then the chemistry wears out.
Yeah.
So it will be safe to say in any relationship, there's a period of adaptation and adjustment. We don't expect people to change because they don't. They are who they are. But that couple, that couple, and Ricky Ricardo, the sitcom, because if you watch that sitcom, all they do is, I did this, you did that. I mean, it's a perfect example of a couple in a sitcom that went back and forth, tit for tat. But the whole thing is giving the self attention, I think, and not to complete you. So
yes,
and yes, I like that. The bell, yes. I feel like I'm in school. Yeah. But this is school, love school, right? Love school. But it is...
I bring the bell everywhere. It says more than I could say.
And this whole thing of adapting and adjusting and requesting what the needs are. And these are my requests. These are my needs. can we adapt and adjust? I don't expect you to change everything about you, but there is always, and we're always adapting and adjusting in everything we do. The moment you walk outside and go to a job or go into the supermarket, you're adapting to the situation, the environment, the atmosphere, the energy around you, the space, because it's all about that space. And I find that this is a really important point because people think they need to change, and that's not where we're going, right?
No.
Well, I think yes and no. The reality that we face is that most of the time a request comes out as a complaint. So it's
okay.
like, rather than
ring the bell.
Rather than saying the request, it's like it's a complaint. Why is the trash can so full? Oh, it stinks. That trash can stinks. Why does it stink? And I'm sitting over there going, yeah, why does it stink? It is really full. That's true, honey. Yeah, you're right. It does. Now but behind the complaint is really a request. Will you take the trash? It stinks and it's hot, right? So what happens in relationships is oftentimes there's no request making, there's a lot of complaining going on, and it's masking the request. So if we could get past the complaints and start making requests of each other, then we start to live empowered. It's a completely different way of being.
Ring the bell.
Right. Empowered in the sense that Laurie can make a request of me and I have the option to say yes or no. Now it's a little less risk because I love her. So
you will do yes anything.
To hear no.
Well, but wait a minute. Here's what I learned. I thought, first of all, what I learned about being a woman was that I wasn't taught to make direct requests. I was taught to complain. And what I also hated when I would get together with a man was that if I complained, he would try to fix me. Like I was broken. Like if I wasn't broken, I wouldn't have these complaints. And then what I learned from Michael, it seemed so simple. Like he taught me this. It took years. I mean, he taught me you can make a request. And I was like, oh.
I would actually say, I hear your complaint. Is there a request?
And then I thought, then I made up, this is the self-responsibility. Then I made up that I only had a quota. Like I had a quota of requests, like I could make 5 requests a day. I don't know why I made this up, but it was like, I could only make 5 requests a day. And one day he said to me, and so one day I made a lot of requests. And then I was complaining about something and he said, can you make that a request? And I said, isn't my quota up for today?
I like this.
And he said, no. He said, there's no limit on requests. I would prefer to hear you complain. He said, don't you know that men hate complaining and then they try to fix women because they think they're broken. That's why they're complaining so much. So, I mean, this is one of those never-ending cycles that happens between the genders when they haven't, like I call it the cosmic joke, like there's a certain meta language that women have and a certain meta language that men have. And I'm talking about pretty much hetero people here. I'm not talking about people who are gender bending so much, although they probably have some iterations of this. Like there are ways that women communicate. They don't be direct necessarily unless they own a company and they're the CEO, then they're direct. But people call them also a bitch then. And then men, okay, she's complaining. How can I make it right? How can I fix it? And they're like,
we take it personally.
Yeah, like they're doing something wrong. So who this is one of those mysteries. Like here's another mystery. It takes men 1 to 5 minutes to get excited sexually and to want to be directly stimulated on the penis when they're excited sexually. It takes women 20 to 40 minutes to want direct stimulation on the clitoris. So men are like, okay, I'm ready. 5 to 7 minutes. Women are like, what are they doing? I'm not even, I can't, I'm not, there's no way I'm ready. And no one taught us this. No doctor ever told me this. This is one of those cosmic joke things that's crazy making, that can make people nuts with each other. And all they need is some education.
Yeah.
Right. And then you have the control, the people that are controlling in the like the directness, maybe the CEO types, but they're people what to do. So that again would mask request or any kind of compassionate stimulation or affection that could be there, because you need that little bit of juice to sort of, jumpstart the maybe the conversation or the action or whatever you want to manifest.
Right.
There should be a little juice there, like of compassion of something, because they're beloveds. Remember, right? Isn't that what they are? Yeah. We got to go back to that.
Yeah. Well, how do we return to love?
How do we return to love? So that's the question always that we're asking, and that's the question. We're saying one of two things in our classes. Welcome to your life, meaning this is the way you knee-jerk reaction through life, or return to love, do something different, create the love, do something different. How do you get creative here and keep creating the return to love when you're beloveds, instead of saying, okay, I'll go get another one. I'll go out in the market and try and find somebody else, because the only person always there is you.
Yeah.
So this is why we work with singles, because we want to prevent singles from having to go into the market again and again and again and again and again, looking for that love, when in fact, maybe there's something about themselves that could shift. Maybe there's a way they could do something a little differently, and they could actually find love in a place they weren't necessarily looking, and all of a sudden find ways to return to love over and over and over again. And that's what we've done. So that's why we feel expert at it.
That's the question that we ask each other when we're in a, kind of we don't fight. We
think it's
a place where we're like at an impasse, and there's frustration and there's upset. And then we start to ask the question, well, how do we return to love? How do we return to love? What do you need to return to love? What do you need to return to love? And the first one who returns to love wins.
Oh, right. This is beautifully said. I'm so, this is such a beautiful interview we're having today. I really like the essence and the energy here that's coming from the both of you. This is
thank you.
Amazing. Yes. And it is about, it sounds like a Monopoly game, right? Back to love instead of what is Monopoly? Back to the $1 million, or back? Well, you know what? Love is the $1 million, right?
That's right. That's right.
The riches. So we're just about coming to the the hour here. I just have one quick question. This is just, I don't know. What is good sex to you, Laurie? That's my final question. Oh, what is good sex?
That's great. Good sex to me is my partner being present, my partner moving slower than he usually thinks he needs to move, like slower than anyone ever imagined. Even I didn't imagine. Having communication before, during, and after, and my partner wanting to produce oxytocin in my body, like the hormone oxytocin, serotonin, dopamine, all the things that endorphins, all the things my body wants out of a love-making session. And it could be quick, or it could be really long and drawn out, but it has elements of all that, like really caring about where I am.
So does good sex include looking in the eyes and saying, I love you?
Yeah. Yes, we say that before, during, and after.
Oh, wonderful. This is great. I think I'll tap it right there. I love you. Looking in the eyes, in the middle, and at the end. So that makes the sex even more wholesome.
Absolutely.
Well, it turns it from being an ordinary experience into a sacred experience.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And there's some other things that we do that also enhance, I think, the energy field between us. And so another part that I think is important is connection. Laurie mentioned earlier that I did a survey with over 300 men and women. And when I asked the women, what does it take for you to be a 10 out of 10 sexual experience? They gave me 5 things. 5 things they said would make a level 10 experience for them. The first one was presence, obviously, was safety. Now, without presence, you can't have safety. So it was presence, safety, connection. That's that I love you when looking in the eyes, communication, and then finally skill. Okay. Now, I thought skill would have been number 1, as a man. But when I actually asked women what that was, they said, yeah, skill is important. So we do need to practice our skill sets, but we need to practice more how to be present, how to create safety. You see, I feel like a woman can open to her beloved when she feels fully safe, when she feels held, when she feels connected. That is like the lotus flower opening to the new day, and watching the sun really admire her and devote himself
I'm melting.
To her.
I don't know about you. I'm melting.
And to shine his rays of love.
And they have to learn all these other things so that the skill can become more present, more prominent, it can become the actual skill. Well, I think we're at the end of our interview here. You two have been lovely. Maybe you want to just tell me where people can get in touch with you, what's coming up, and that you might want to talk about one of your upcoming workshops. You are listening to Discover Joyous Love. I'm your host, Anita DeFrancesco. My work is Tantra Wisdom, but here are my guests, Laurie Handlers and Michael Gibson, the extraordinary lovers, and they're going to tell us where we can find them and get more information and follow them.
Thank you. So you can find us at lauriehandlers.com, and you can find lots of information there and a membership portal, etc. A lot of things going on at lauriehandlers.com. You can find us on Facebook. You can find us on Instagram. You can find us on TikTok. Pretty much Laurie Handlers or Extraordinary Lovers. We have a week-long retreat coming up in Tulum, Mexico, November 28th to December 4th, that we're excited about, and it's in a fabulous place in Tulum. And we would if anyone's interested, singles or couples, we would love to have them get in touch with us. They should write directly to me, Laurie or info@lauriehandlers.com.
Okay, and all of this information will be in the podcast write-up, but info@lauriehandlers.com.
Yeah.
Okay, so for this
that's the best way. That's the best way. We still have some spaces available in that, and we clearly can make a difference. For all those reasons we said earlier, if they're arguing or if they lost their spark or whatever it is, or if the single has been doing it over and over again for years and they want to they want to crack the code. They want to find out how to actually make it happen, that they return to love with somebody.
Right. Beautiful. Yeah. Beautifully said.
Thank you.
I want to anything else you want to say, Michael? He's with you so they can reach him through you, right?
Yes.
Yes. Okay. And the place to go is info@lauriehandlers.com. You also reach me.
He gets those emails too.
Yeah. And if you want to learn more about the retreat, you can go to extraordinarylovers.com. That'll take you to our retreat page.
Beautiful.
Okay, for future ones coming up next year. And I know you have things coming up next year as well.
Thank you.
Well, I want to thank you both for being here on my show, Discover Joyous Love. I've been your host, Anita DeFrancesco. This is episode number 43.